The County Conversation podcast is sponsored by Daffabet, the world's leading online betting site. To find out more, visit daffabet.com. Hello and welcome to the County Conversation, the show where we take the three most interesting stories from the last week of county cricket and give you the inside track to them. Here, I'm Cameron Ponsonby.
I am Nick Friend.
Perfect. And we're apart this week, which is sad, but I had to let some builders into my flat, and so we couldn't do it in person. But look, we can't.
I could have come to your flat, couldn't I? But
you could have done, but it's so busy. There's people working here. There's people working the flat downstairs. You as a third variable, I didn't need it. No one needed it, but it's fine.
Floors are caved in.
We'll carry on. Our three topics this week: Tailenders opening the batting, first wins. Just as a genre, we've got a lot of kind of firsts happening this week in county cricket, and Zimbabwe. They're in town for a one-off test, but for county cricketers, it's becoming a very popular winter destination. Why? But to start, hey, we're at Taunton. It's Somerset versus Sussex. Sussex win the toss and they opt to bowl. Who's walking out to bat? Is it Archie Vaughan? Is it Tom Lammonby? The way it's been carded on Somerset's social media post? Or is it Josh Davey and Lewis Gregory? Now, this took the county cricket world by storm, I'd say, Nick, because as people try to wrap their head around why on earth it was happening, I'm going to give you the quote from head coach Jason Kerr, Somerset head coach. Lewis Gregory is unable to bowl in this match because of a niggle, but he's been in great form with the bat and we still wanted him in the side. We also wanted to play four seamers, and the best way of getting Josh Davey to fit into this team was to let him open with Lewis. Is this madness, or is there some method to it, please, Nick?
I love let him as the verb here. Like,
Okay.
Go on, Josh.
You can do it.
How bad can it be? Oh, is it madness? Did you say?
Yeah, or is there method? Method?
Oh, no, I mean, well, look, Lewis Gregory entered 89 not out in the second innings and won the game. So, I suppose hard to call it madness. I mean, look, I've gone back and forth on this. I was trying to find some more precedents for us to discuss last night. I ended up scrolling through a Reddit thread actually where they had this exact discussion, but not about this, like 5 years ago, and it was very much in the context of Test cricket and people saying things like people asking questions that I'd never thought about before. Things like, why don't they backload their batting so that actually your top four are coming in after 30 overs when the bowler's a bit tired, the ball's not new. And I guess if you read that and don't put any thought into it at all, part of it's like,
well, that's what
there is some. I mean, like Somerset, there is some context behind it, isn't there? Which that Somerset have not started the season like this. That they have struggled for a consistent run scoring opening pair for quite a while, and even before Sean Dixon's hand injury recently, he was under a fair bit of pressure for his struggles in that role. And Archie Vaughan is a young lad who's been thrown into it, and Tom Lammonby has done it a bit, and Andy Mead's done it a bit. Like they've gone, it's not like they've gone, this is plan A. Josh Davey, for what it's worth, got to go back quite a long time here, but Josh Davey was a batter at the start of his professional career.
Oh, absolutely. I've got the numbers. I've got the numbers ready for you.
And Lewis Gregory, I always think sometimes I think Lewis Gregory looks a funny fit in sides he's in, because he's very much he's such an all-rounder, isn't he? If you know what I mean. Like he's a very capable batter, he's a very capable seamer. I'm not sitting here saying I'm surprised he's not done it before now, but like he's not the kind of player you look at and think that looked really weird in Gregory's case alone. As a concept, against Ollie Robinson, Nathan McAndrew on a green top, I get it. I didn't think it said an awful lot about. I didn't think it said an awful lot for the other batters available, and I
like
wonder
it.
what they might be thinking. But I do also think if you're trying to get guys into a side, ultimately everyone's going to bat, right? Like, and we've both played enough club cricket that we've had days where you look, and I remember very specifically one occasion where I took a team to a long away day. And I looked at that. I spent the whole week looking at my side, going, "We are a batter light. How can I pretend that that's not the case?" So shout out to Jack Price here, who was, a very solid number 10, 11. You opened the batting for that day. And third ball innings, number 3 was in. But at least it looked longer. It looked longer. And I don't
Perception
know.
is
I
reality.
think there is, that's not why Somerset have done it, but it does. It only has to work for 10 overs, and then it looks like it's worked, doesn't it? Because you're none down, and suddenly Sussex might look at the card and go, "Geez, they've got X, Y, and Z coming at 9 and 10 here. We're gonna have to
Yeah.
bowl well and bowl for a long time potentially."
I think it's fine. And I also think there is far more method. I think, let me start this again. Earlier this season at Surrey at the Oval, Josh Davey batted at 3. And I was on commentary and we were all going, this is crazy. Like, what? They've shoved him up here. This is so weird. Granted, there'd been an injury to Sean Dixon, so maybe he'd even opened the batting. I can't quite remember. And then I messaged Somerset's comms guy, like, just asking what is happening here? And he kind of gave me a bit of a slap on the wrist because he was like, Josh Davies a batter, or at least originally started out as one. And so if you go and see Josh Davies' first class debut for Middlesex, it's in a universities game and he opens the batting and he scores a half century. In his early career, when he starts playing for Scotland, he is playing for Scotland as a batter. He does bowl a bit as well, but like he is in the top 6. Occasionally he's opening against Namibia. But this is something he is kind of returning to. It's a prior skill set that he still has in the locker and he's kind of been working on. And we're very used to people having second skills with the ball. We're just less used to it when it's second skills with the bat. And so, as you say, you kind of give Somerset the perception of lengthening that order. It works. It's fine,
I
especially.
think there's. I wonder if this is true. Mason Crane has batted in every position in first class cricket other than number 7. And don't worry, he knows this, and
Yeah.
he's working hard at correcting this. But if you think back to Mason Crane as a 20-year-old, or even Matt Parkinson a couple of years ago, you thought of them as number 11s for all intents and purposes. And when players get told to go away and work at their batting, you don't go away and learn to reverse ramp. If you know what I mean, like when you're told you're not getting the side because we need you to offer more with the bat. It is often for these tailenders it's often more about being solid in defence, being able to stick around with the in batter. And actually, what you end up with is, I think in some cases, and certainly in Crane's case, for example, is someone who's a really like doughty, nuggety, proper, give it a go, lower order batter who's come to like love his batting. I think Mason averaged 30 plus last year in the championship,
Brilliant, didn't he? Yeah.
and he opened the batting. I messaged him last night about this to remind me which game it was. He opened the batting the last game of the 2021 County Championship season for Hampshire at Aidbeth, if that's how you pronounce that place, away at Lancashire. He opened the second innings. He described himself not as a night watchman, but as a speed bump. So this was a club pitch, and it was doing so much that his job was just to stand there and be sacrificed, essentially. I think he was out third or fourth ball. But that point being, he's batted all over the shop. But actually, this is not that. Sorry, it is uncommon, but this is not the first time in years it's happened. Don Bess did it for Yorkshire a couple of weeks ago, and I think similar to the Josh Davey example here. How do you get the guy into your team? Where's the spot? Don Best did it in the week when Yorkshire had all the England middle order, essentially.
Yeah.
Root, Brooke, Bairstow, etc., etc. And therefore, how do you get Don Best inside? We get Don Best open batting. And we'll get to this later. We'll get to talking about Zimbabwe later. But Don Best is one of the guys who's done first-class cricket in Zimbabwe in the winter. And he batted at 3. And anyone who remembers, Don Best's early England career, 2018.
He can bat.
He can bat. He made a 50 in that Pakistan series. It's often spinners, interestingly, not seamers, because you're always going to find a way to get a seamer into your side. Will Beer did almost half the 2019 season batting the top 3 for Sussex. Started because Phil Salt got injured, but was parachuted up to open. I think opened 4 games in a row. Salt came back to fitness, and Will Beer, to keep this guy in the team, started batting 3.
Yeah.
So it's been done before. As I say, I'm completely okay with it. I like it. I don't mind it. And everyone talks about how tough a job it is opening the batting. If you can find a way of nullifying or I suppose lessening the threat for a bit. I suppose it doesn't matter whether it's someone who's only going to bat for you or whether it's someone who's going to open the bowling for you 90 overs later.
We both came up with our own words for it. You called it a front watchman. I've gone
I
for
prefer. I think I prefer speed bump.
speed bump's lovely from Mason Crane. I went for a night watch opener, and I was actually trying to convince. I've been trying to convince my friends of the benefits of this, especially in club cricket, where if you're playing limited overs and the opposition have a best bowler on their opening, send a speed bump in.
I was asked to do it once in a club game, and I was sent in to speed bump the bowler bowling the second over, who was an Australian quick, and I got cleaned up by the bloke in the first over. So I never.
Mason, didn't take any balls out of him.
Well, there you go, boys. Job done. Enjoy.
I do think, and one quick final note on why I think it's spinners. I think that also speaks to kind of stuff, kind of like the wicket keepers, how wicket keepers often don't open the batting because they're tired. And like you're more likely to be fatigued if you're like a seamer and you've bowled 3 spells. It's like, go and stick them on, mate. Go and have a bat. Although that is literally what Josh Davies doing.
I don't know. I part of me thinks the spin.
We've got to move on. We've got to move on.
Do you not think the spin thing also comes from like the, inherently rubbish attitude towards spin? That the only way to get a spinner in the team is to bump them up to open the batting.
I've heard this story in so many different forms. I think it was a friend of a friend. He's like a bit older. He's got a lad who's like kind of in his teens or whatever. And the young lad's an off spinner and bumps into Ollie Rayner at like a county ground watching like Surrey Middlesex or something. And the dad goes, go on, ask Ollie to give you some advice for how to be a better off spinner. And the young kid goes like, oh, Ollie, how do I become a better off spinner? He went, get better at batting. That was it. Like that was his advice. It's like, there's no point if you're not going to bat. Anyway, that is it for the Night Watch openers. We'll be back for part 2 to talk about some kind of first wins, some historic wins. Gloucestershire, they got their first home win in about 970 days. I don't really know what that means. That means just under 3 years, basically. Worcestershire, they had their first win of the season. Leicestershire, the first time they've had 3 wins in a row since 1998. And the first home game in the county championship for Jason Roy. We did want to speak a little bit about Jay Roy because he came back last week against Warwickshire in a game where the ground staff at Edgbaston have put out one of the flattest wickets in the history of the world. It was wonderful, and I thought it was quite a funny way to welcome back someone to the Red Bull game who's exclusively been playing 2020 cricket for 5 years. But there's been something lovely about it, kind of covering and watching and then listening to Jason Roy afterwards. He gave an interview with Mark Church, who's a kind of Surrey stalwart himself, and kind of the joy that Roy had when he took a catch off Tom Laws in the slips. And I've loved that in itself. He's been out for 5 years and he goes straight back to first slip. And just enjoying and having the resonance and the reward of the longer format. He was playing in the same game as Johnny Bairstow, so Surrey put up a nice social media post about kind of those two as the ODI stalwarts. And Jason Roy's been absolutely loving it. How weird is this? So before last week, his previous Red Bull game was a game in the Bob Willis Trophy in 2020. And then the one before that, his penultimate game, was in the Ashes in 2019. Incredible. Anything you want to add to that, or we can move on?
I was there for day one when he was in the field, and I was gutted that that wasn't there to watch him bat. To be honest, that Ashes thing is interesting, isn't it? Like it was kind of wrong place, wrong time. But there is a world in which someone with Jason Roy's, game and technique and the way, I just loved. He was my favourite 50 over batter to watch, and I don't know. It was like that. It was that Paul Rudd meme, wasn't it? The look at me, look at us. Who'd have thought it? And like Johnny Bairstow and Jason Roy sharing a county championship pitch in 2025, just like wild for so many reasons. I mean, I guess there's a sadness there that you've got these two, and obviously Johnny Bairstow's just gone off the IPL, but you've got these two global T20 competitions going on at the moment, and it's kind of a reminder of, I suppose, of the aging process that, particularly with the replacement stuff, everyone's getting a gig, and yet you've got Jason Roy standing here playing for Surrey, and it's kind of a reminder of, I suppose, like how he's declined since that 2019 summer, not so much the Ashes, but the World Cup beforehand, and you know, I kind of, I know he's been lost in the English game these last few years or so, but like, I do hope people remember him as this guy who was incredible to watch.
Oh,
Like,
it was awesome.
absolutely, he was. I'd always say this, I think he was the most important player in that England 50 over team. Remember, he injured his hamstring for 3 games of the World Cup, and the
Yeah,
house of
lose it.
cards tumbled. And somehow he was back 8 days later with a hamstring, and played, the knock playing against Australia, which is the best I've ever seen by an England player in the semi-final. And yeah, it was just lovely to see him out there. As you said, like, I thought it was nostalgic in a really nice way, and but
I
kind of,
think
kind of like a warped nostalgia for Jason Roy in the County Championship.
I think nostalgic is a very good word for it. And also, I hope, well, if he's judging by how much he's been enjoying it in the last week, you hope he might stick around for a while. Or maybe it's a case he just kind of is having a little Red Bull holiday, just have a little taste of it again. But it's a surprise to everyone. But I think within Surrey spheres, it's been kind of on the cards for a while. I think Gareth Bassey had been throwing Red Bulls to him for a fair chunk of time, kind of with this in mind, basically.
For him to hit, you mean?
Sorry?
For him to hit.
For him to hit, yes, yeah. Not that, not just
Can
for kind
you
of fun.
just put this in the bag, please?
But there we go. That's a bit. We've shoehorned that in a little bit, maybe because I was meant to mention it earlier. But it's fine. It's fine. We wanted to give Jason Roy some love. On to Gloucestershire, who we're going to start with in this kind of first win trifecta. Now, you wrote this down in our notes again. It's the second or third time you've mentioned it. Gloucestershire have had their first win at home in 970 days. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, that this was their first win of the season. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And yet you continue to write in the notes that Gloucestershire are playing some of the best cricket in the country. What are you talking about?
Well, I wrote that kind of to remind you and to vindicate myself when I said it a few weeks ago. No team in the
How?
country, no team in the country has more bonus points in,
Oh,
in this
Jesus.
this season
So
than
what?
Gloucestershire.
So
And
what?
that's not my answer, but I do think
So what
bonus
you said
points are
first.
bonus points are a decent gauge of how a team is going, of how a team is playing its cricket. I think Gloucestershire's issue, and actually, was not fixed yesterday. Um, but one of their issues is that they play at a ground where it's very tough to win. It's very flat, and if you're put into bat first, it's very, very, very hard to take 10 wickets in the fourth innings. Um, in fact, it was
Question.
somewhat careless of them to be 7 down yesterday in chasing 160. But no, look, they do a lot of the right things for English cricket. They field the quickest attack in the country.
Yep.
They they've produced they've got 2 or 3 young guys coming through at the moment, youngish guys, Ben Charlesworth, the two Price brothers, Ollie and Tom, um, who are incredibly highly thought of. Ben Charlesworth played in the ILT20. Sorry, was at the ILT20 over the winter. Ollie Price done Lions tour. Tom Price, I think, would have done Lions tour by now, but not for a couple of injuries. Don Goodman, their 6'7" quick, hasn't played the last couple of rounds, but took a 9 wicket haul a couple of weeks ago. Another home game actually, but Ajit Singh Dale is quick. Zumakta has been around England stuff for the last couple of years, done England Lions tours as well. It's only a couple of years that James Bracey played for England. And he was the first in a long time they'd produced for England. They do an awful lot right, and they've played an awful lot of good cricket, and genuinely could well have won 3 or 4 games a season. They could also have lost a couple more because the games they've been involved in that have ended in draws have been teams chasing a win and becoming quite close one way or another. But no, like, they benefited, I think, from being unusually dry because also in Bristol you tend to lose a day or at least half a day
Oh yeah,
for a
they had that.
Champo game.
They had that
So
crazy record at the beginning of last year, wasn't it? Where they just didn't play any
they didn't play
cricket.
any cricket. Yeah. So no, look, and it is a reminder of how close Division Two is, particularly that they bounced, I think, from second bottom to join third on the back of that win. I think every single team apart from Derby, apart from the top two, changed places in this round of Division Two games.
Nice.
Lancs were bottom and obviously no longer are. I think Northampton are bottom. Kent were top, weren't they? And they've lost 3 in a row and they're now lingering towards the bottom. It's a crazy old division. The only guys who can't stop winning, as you said before, are Leicester, who've won 3 in a row.
So just a quick reminder for those listening about what happened in Gloucestershire's victory. They were playing against Kent in Bristol at home. Kent got 424 first up. Gloucestershire went past them with 516. The century for Cameron Green and James Bracey. Then Gloucestershire bowled Kent out for 253, leaving themselves 160 to get in the last afternoon. And they did get there just about. They lost 7 wickets on the way, and they were indebted to Cameron Green, who finished on 67 not out, and in effect kind of paid back that mysterious anonymous member donation, which was kind of how the signing got over the line. This is pure gossip, and based in no journalistic integrity at all. But I remember a friend of mine who plays cricket down that part of the world. He was like, "It's Aaron Banks."
It's not Aaron Banks.
I know, but for those,
it was not Aaron Banks.
Okay, but for the sake of people who aren't across why it might be Aaron Banks and need a reminder of who Aaron Banks is, Aaron Banks was the Brexit financier, and he basically pumps a bunch of money into club cricket in Bristol. And so my friend enjoyed that particular gossipy storyline. It's not true.
2 plus 2 is whatever
Banks.
Number you want it to be, isn't it?
2 plus 2 equals Banks. And look, it's not him, but it's fine. It's fun. Gossip is fun. It's okay. We're allowed to enjoy ourselves from time to time. But as you said, the only team that does keep winning is Leicestershire. They're 40 points clear at the top of Division 2 already. They've won 3 in a row. These guys were, I don't want to say the laughing stock, but they were pretty close to it for a while. Maybe going back kind of 10 years now.
Yeah, and reputationally, it was 10, 11, 12 years ago. They went, we had Lewis Hill on the show a couple of weeks ago, and it was, when he first started was really when they went those 2 years that with those years without a victory, and I guess the thing is, you can win one game to get out of that, but as you say, you remain the laughing stock. It's the reputational damage, I suppose, that takes longer to clear than the results, and which I think is probably why people are kind of just being like, 40 points clear of third is a lot of points. They could take 2 rounds off and still be top 2. We're not quite halfway through the season yet. The next 2 games are Kookaburra games. Sorry. The next two games after the next block of fixtures. So post May, a Kookaburra games, a lot could still happen. But you do kind of ask, like, are they like? You do quite well not to go up from here. And I know Leicester fans, will sort of shiver at the thought of the mockers being put on them. But to win 4 games out of 6, I tried to look at this. Unfortunately, league tables update themselves by the week. So, but trying to, when would a county championship team, particularly in Division 2, which is renowned for its draws, have last been 4 wins from 6 coming to the end of May? Yeah, that's
I don't know the answer to that.
Partly because the rain would be, the rain we've not had, but also because very hard to force results in Div 2. But that was their first win at Lords since 1980. I went round to interview Peter Hanscom and Alfonso Thomas after that game, actually, and they were playing Hot Chocolates, You Sexy Thing in the change room. I believe in miracles. And I don't think we're past that. Then it's not miracle territory. They won the One Day Cup in 23. No team has won more T20 Blast titles than Leicestershire, which is an often forgotten fact. That they are really, really well coached by Alfonso Thomas and James Taylor, who I think are both like close enough to the game still that they've got this like young wisdom about them, if you know what I mean. And and I think Claude Henderson, their director of cricket, is very switched on, very good. They've used the loan system very wisely, as we talked about before. Here, They've won. Yeah, that was the first. They've won 3, not just 3 games in a row. They've won 3 games in a row inside 3 days. They're rocking up and battering teams, and what they're doing really well is they are winning the 3rd innings. In 2 of those 3 wins, they were kind of level after first innings at Gloucestershire a few weeks ago and at Middlesex this week just gone. And in both those games, they've come out for the 3rd innings and they've just rolled their host and left themselves needing 100, 130 odd to win both games. They did this one much more comfortably than they did the one at Bristol. But I think they would say they are getting fairly fortunate with their away games, in that teams keep producing decks that suit Ian Holland and Ben Green's 75-mile-an-hour keeper-up seamers down to the ground. They are nipping blokes out left, right, and centre. I think only Kyle Abbott's got more championship wickets than Ian Holland so far this season. Ben Green's 21 wickets this season are already his career best for a Champo season. but they're just turning up and doing a job on everyone. Rayan Ahmed's only bowled 47 overs this season. They've just got a way of playing, and they are unashamedly efficient in what they're doing. And yeah, they're only going to be stronger because Shan Masood arrives in 2 weeks as well. So it's not like they're going to fall off a cliff come June.
Well, if there's one thing you can rely on from the county conversation, it's a bit of a Leicestershire loving. We've been fans of the Foxes for a while now, and I'm a bit worried Shan Masood's going to really muck up that top three because it's just going to make it more stable and more sensible. Get him at 4. Don't break up the Patel
If I remember
Budinger.
correctly, he bowls Little Meadows as well, doesn't he, Sean?
Does he?
I think so.
It's not
I
what they've
remember
signed him.
no, but I'd like to think he could, just slot nicely into the Holland green axis.
Goodness me, please. And I spoke about this before. Sol Budinger, I love watching him. Go and watch him taking down Dane Patterson in the chase of 100. And he is just walking down the wicket, striding and just belting him for 6. He gets out for about 20 or 30, but who cares? It's the fun and the friends we make along the way. We're going to give a passing reference to Worcestershire. They got off the mark this year with their first win of the season. Only one team in the country have not won a county championship game this year. Nick, who is it? 3, 2, 1.
It's still Lancashire.
Still Lancashire, the only team in the country without a 4-day win this season. Worcestershire got on the board after 4 defeats in a row, which is nice. I feel like they've been involved in a lot of fun matches. I don't think I'm making that up. I feel
they've been involved in matches that have made headlines for one reason or another, I think. Yeah.
Well, no, they saved a draw against Somerset in the opening day. Yeah. They lost, but only by 28 runs to Essex.
With the controversial catch.
With the controversial catch, of course, and Brooks playing that innings. And then they beat Essex here by 225 runs.
They also suffered, I think, the biggest ever county championship defeat by runs away at Yorkshire.
They did do that. I've got the numbers up in front of me. 504 runs. That's so many.
And lost inside 2 days against Durham.
So basically what we're saying is I was right. They're involved in lots of fun matches all the time.
Yeah,
noteworthy matches.
Noteworthy matches, indeed.
But anyway, they're off the mark for the season. Matthew Waite had a fantastic performance. They're still 13 points adrift at the bottom of the table. Yorkshire in 9th, which I hadn't quite realised, to be honest. You kind of, because of that, the way the winds change tables so quickly, there are teams that you kind of see hovering in mid-table and then one loss and they kind of shunt all the way down. And similarly, one win and you can shoot yourself up, unless you're Worcestershire and they're still 10th. Anyway.
George DeBell was at New Road for that game, and wrote a very good piece actually about the end of the game actually, but about I suppose like how New Road gives them a fighting chance, because unlike a lot of grounds, put it this way, if Surrey comes to New Road, they'd be very unlucky to get a flat one there.
Wonderful. Right. Well, just before we finish off the part 2 here, we're kind of going around the grounds with results. A quick plug for the cricket draft and what you need to do to get these people into your team. We're going to get we get some weird teams in kind of rounds 6 and 7. People get a bit tired. They go for a bit of rotation. There's one eye on the white ball stuff coming up. I want to plug 3 people that I'm going to roll off the tongue. First is I'm going to go for Ajit Singh Dale because he got his kind of career best figures last week, or the day's just gone, took 7 for in Gloucestershire's win. I also want to give a quick note to Matthew Waite, who I just mentioned before for Worcestershire, in fine form. And also, we didn't mention him during... No, not Jay Roy. We didn't mention him in the subject of tailenders opening the batting, but James Minto up at Durham, left arm seamer, who's 17. When he made his first class debut last year at the Oval, Scott Borthwick went on to commentary and very firmly said, as this 17-year-old child was bumping Rory Burns, he's a batter. This kid is a batter. He was shoved up to the top of the order for Durham to face the last over of the day. They only had one over to bat on the end of day 2, I believe it was. And he went on and got 60 or 70. It was a flat one. It was like 500 place, 650. But I reckon he might get
Durham won,
exactly. And I reckon he might get another rollout. So if you want to have a few tweaks to your lineup for week 7 before the white ball stuff starts, have a look at James Minto. Anything you want to add to that?
Only that I should have said this in that first part. But I do love when you get a rogue opener, and you sort of look and you're looking at a scorecard, and you're not there, and part of you wonders whether it's just a mistake. If you know what I mean, whether somewhere I don't know whether Alex Lees is wearing James Minto's shirt, or whether the guy on the NV player account on that day has just clicked the wrong button.
Yeah.
It's, I was playing on Saturday and I looked at the scorecard and saw that Minto was opening the batting, or maybe that Minto was, I can't remember which, it was a Sunday, sorry, and he was 67 not out. And part of me, my first thought wasn't good on this 17-year-old. It was, well, someone's clicked the wrong button.
Yeah. But it was the right button, and he may open a lot in the future. You never know. We'll see him shuffle up the order. Right, on to Zimbabwe.
The Cricketers' award-winning team brings our subscribers news, features and insight on county and international cricket every single day. You can try us now by signing up for £1. Yes, you heard that correctly, just £1 at thecricketer.com/digital.
What links Ryan Higgins, Matt Parkinson, Dom Bess, Alex Russell, Ben Compton, Safe Save, and Will Frayne? All of the above have recently been playing some first-class cricket over in Zimbabwe over the winter. Yes, you've got the likes of Ryan Higgins, who grew up in Zim. Ben Compton is from South Africa, so it's a bit more kind of natural for those guys to head back down to that part of the world and have a game or two. But Zimbabwe is becoming a very popular destination for first-class cricketers to go to. And we thought we'd chat a little bit about it this week, given that Zimbabwe are in town for a one-off test match. Very simply, Nick, why are players going?
It's just another place you can go and play, isn't it? It's I suppose it's
I hope it gets more interesting than that.
it's an alternative to, I was just trying to think of the best way of putting it. It's another place you can go and play, but it's unique, and it's not quite unique, but it's different in the sense that it's an opportunity to go and play first class cricket abroad. So it's not grade cricket. It's not Saturday, wait for Saturday come round. It's not a franchise. It's not the franchise stuff. It is literally go and do a season as like a your equivalent to a county overseas. So you play in the Logan Cup in the 4-day comp, and then there's the domestic T20 comp as well, and the 50 over competition too. So you literally go and do, some of or all of a season as an overseas player in a full member nation where your stats are your stats. So they're going on your first class record and T20 record, your list A record, and also because Zimbabwe are keen for players to come over. Kyle Jarvis, the former Lancashire seamer, former Zimbabwe bowler as well. I think he's still in the role. He certainly was like this talent scout, if that's the right phrase for it. And he'd basically look after and organise these overseas players to go over. So Alex Russell, who's one of the lesser known on that list, he was the Northamptonshire leg spinner who was released at the end of last season. Young leggy. He was headhunted by Douglas Hondo, who former coach, former player. He put in touch with Kyle Jarvis, and suddenly Russell goes over, and he's taken 78 first-class wickets in 2 years in Zimbabwe. I think he was the second leading wicket taker, or the leading wicket taker in his first year. He's taken 40 odd wickets in both years, basically. And it's a shame. Unfortunately, didn't quite have the impact I think he obviously hoped it would do when he went back to Northamptonshire. He went back for his last year. Didn't really get a game, was released in the season, but then went back out to Zim over the winter and took another 40 odd wickets. And he is an interesting case in that he kind of went out to prove a point in a way, I suppose.
But it sounds like Zimbabwe are quite an interesting case of being creative in how to get overseas players into their structure. So you mentioned they've got Kyle Jarvis, who kind of is almost like a talent scout of the county system to find people who may want to go over and play in Zimbabwe. But Zimbabwe as a nation also have a tie-up with the PSL side, Lahore Tailenders.
Yes, and they...
and so what does that look like? What does that mean?
Every team has a Tailenders seamer. certainly did.
which is cool.
Which yeah, and there are others who weren't on that list have gone. Henry Brooks, Middlesex team was over this winter for a little bit. Ed Byram, who's another one who was born in Zimbabwe, was playing winters there. The and guys, Matt Parkinson went when his stock wasn't particularly high. For example, had a good winter, bowled. Don Bess struggled for last. Had a struggle a couple of years ago. He went over, ended up batting at 3, as we said earlier, and just kind of rounds guys. Quite what the level is. It's not. We saw the Zimbabwe national side were beaten by the select 11 this week. It's not the same level as county cricket, and it's a very different world. I think the pitches are very flat, for one thing, but also it's players are on significantly different and less money than what county cricketers are earning over here. It's a very different lifestyle. It's much more hand to mouth, and the stability and security that comes with being a county cricketer on multi-year deal and whatever players are paid here. So but what it has going for it enormously is that Zimbabwe are a test playing nation, a full member nation, which is why when England plays Zimbabwe later this week, you'll see certainly the squad, Ben Curran, who's been, obviously played for Northants, brother of Sam and Tom, Nick Welch, who went to school in Surrey, played county cricket for Leicestershire. He's in that squad. Blessing Mizrabani. There was a time, if you go back a few years, where he was on the books at Northants, who's now a really accomplished. He had never really worked from here in county cricket, but really accomplished, tall, quick. He's just got an IPL replacement deal as well with RCB. I interviewed Ryan Higgins for a piece on the cricket website.
So what I was going to ask is,
Yeah,
so you mentioned these people: Ben Curran, Nick Welsh, Blessing. I always get the Z and the R mixed up there. Mizrabani.
Well, he's different. That he was all.
I know they're different, but what the kind of point we're angling to is that there'll be the 11 blokes you walk out for Zimbabwe at Trent Bridge. There'll be people with county cricket experience, and you'll see that blend of guys who've played a bit of county cricket and then gone, whether it's worked or not worked for them here, they've then gone and played and opted for the international route. Ryan Higgins is a player that I think a lot of people will look to and go, if they are aware, he grew up in Zimbabwe, moved over to the UK as a teenager, why wouldn't Higgins be part of that group who are potentially walking out to play against England this summer?
Oh, look, I interviewed Ryan. I interviewed Ryan. I guess this first came up in an interview with Ryan a couple of years ago, where he mentioned to me that he'd been approached by Zimbabwe cricket over what I think was the 2023 winter. As you said, Ryan wasn't just brought up there. He was born in Zimbabwe. All his family, other than his parents, still live in Zimbabwe. He lived there till he was 13, and then came over here. And ever since he's played. I think he's been around England pathway stuff. I can't remember if it was 19s or Lions, but I think it was in England under 19s. He played for it. Ryan Higgins is now is very much seen as like the archetypal county cricket all rounder. Arguably, the top tier of like domestic cricketers in the country, guys who are unlikely to play for England, gun county cricketers. So Ryan went over this winter and played for 2 months in Zimbabwe, I think for Southern Rocks, and I interviewed him when he came back, and I broke the story before he went that he was going, but it wasn't so much that he was going; it was that he was going essentially as a recce to see what this would look like for him, because anyone knows Ryan Higgins to any level, has seen him play. He's bloody competitive, and he, I think you need to have something to strive towards. And for him, there are these family ties, but then there's also the desire to test himself in international cricket. He's kind of completed this one, hasn't he? County cricket, like he's very good at with bat and ball, and very good slip gully fielder. Like everyone knows what he does. So he was really up for it, but I should say not up for getting a few caps.
I was going to say, so if he's up for it, why hasn't it happened?
I think when he finally sat down with Zimbabwe cricket towards the end of his time there, I think both parties realised that the other were on quite different pages. I mean, Zimbabwe cricket were of the view that, or of the view in general, they want anyone who's going to go over and push for international spot to be fully embedded in the domestic setup, to play a whole season at the very least, and I don't think they were particularly interested in what Higgins has done in county cricket. They didn't. That wasn't going to get him his spot. What was going to get him his spot was doing a whole summer in Zimbabwe. And what I would say is that he was probably up for this, committing to it, which would have meant declaring for Zimbabwe, which would have meant becoming an overseas player in county cricket, and essentially change his life around. He's got a wife and a child here, but he was prepared to change his life around to give a go to representing his country, or the country of his birth. So it's not happened because that situation didn't fit either party, essentially, and that for Zimbabwe cricket, and I get it to an extent. You want to keep this. You don't want to feel like you're ignoring your whole domestic setup and you're shoehorning people in who've come over for a couple of months and whatever. But also, I am surprised they didn't look at someone with such an excellent domestic record and go, this would be a massive benefit to our team. He balances up a side. He, he's a very good all-rounder. And I don't think this necessarily happens further down the line, because one thing that Higgins is pretty straight on is he's got no intention of just going over when he's 34 to grab a couple of caps to say he did it. It was never about that for him. So
I always find it so.
I think some stuff has to change on both sides for that situation to shift.
I always find it so frustrating when kind of nations are weaker than they need to be. It sounds like such an open goal for Higgins to play. Other people where it's of note that they're going to be walking out for Zimbabwe. Ben Curran, already mentioned him, of course, brother of Sam and Tom, becoming the third international cricketer of that generation, fourth of the family, of course, after their father, who played for Zimbabwe as well. I always felt really sorry for Ben Curran. I remember watching a Sky broadcast of a Surrey T20 years ago, and Sam and Tom were walking out to play, and I'm pretty sure Ben's the middle brother. The commentary kind of made a joke at the expense of Ben Curran that, he must be a bit crap, that one. And he was like opening the batting for Weybridge in the Surrey Prem as like a 19-year-old. Like, no, he's
the third Murray brother.
Yeah, I'm pleased for him to kind of be having his moment in the spotlight. One real quick note, a bit of a tangent away from the Zimbabwe stuff. Probably should have mentioned it higher in the show before we finish. Surrey broke a 21st century record this year. They had over 14,000 through the gate for their fixture against, oh my goodness me, who did they play? I was literally at the match yesterday. Yorkshire. Of course they did, because Johnny Bairstow was there, who I saw just riding around Vauxhall on a line bike. Made me laugh. They had over 14,000 through the door, and kind of a record for the county championship. Attendances have been going up in South London over the last few years, no doubt in part because Surrey have been winning a lot. The summer's been really good so far, so people have been coming down. We had over 6,000 in on Friday. I am not Surrey.
I think Yorkshire is significant there as well. I mean, Yorkshire
significant. I'm interested to see if they break their record again next week, because they're having a push for the Red Bull kind of festival of Red Bull cricket when they're playing against Essex. But it speaks to the evidence is a bit scatty in terms of what the overall county championship attendance figures are at the moment. But I found some stuff online where we're basically back to where we were 30 years ago. So we're having 600,000 through the gates, plural, over the course of a year. And around the turn of the century, it was about 500,000. Those are the numbers I found online. It's hard to cross-check them, but interesting. Nice, good, and congratulations to, I guess, the county championship. Right. I think that's everything from me. What about you, Nick? Anything to add?
No, now that you've congratulated the county championship.
Hey, well done, guys. Well done.
Everyone wins.
Look, that's everything for this week. The County Conversation podcast is sponsored by DafferBet, the world's leading online betting site. To find out more, visit dafferbet.com. I've been Cameron Ponsonby. Thanks very much to Nick Friend for joining me. It's just been us two this week, and we will see you and speak to you again next week.